Welcome back to Mighty Habits. We're always digging up wisdom from those unexpected places. I'm Stephen, by the way, ready to explore some more ideas with you.
And I'm Mary, here to help connect the dots.
So today we're going to take a deep dive into something pretty old, but still surprisingly relevant. We're talking Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, almost 2,000 years old. Wild, right?
It's crazy how this collection of thoughts from a Roman emperor can still speak to us after all these centuries.
It's like we get to look right into the mind of this guy, someone at the top of the power pyramid, and realize he dealt with the same stuff we all do. Stress, purpose, tough decisions, it's all there.
And here's the thing, Meditations wasn't meant to be read by anyone. It wasn't a self-help book or philosophy lecture or anything.
It's more like we're reading his diary, right? Just raw, unfiltered thoughts on dealing with life. Doesn't matter if you're an emperor or just trying to get through the day.
Exactly, and that's what's so appealing about it. It's authentic, relatable, even though, it's from a completely different world.
Okay, but here's where I'm a little skeptical. Can we really apply stuff from a Roman emperor to our lives today? I mean, he didn't have traffic jams, social media, the pressure to keep up with the latest gadgets, right?
So, that's a good point. But I think this is where the main principles of Stoicism come in. The philosophy Aurelius followed.
Okay, remind me what those are again.
Well, Stoicism's about focusing on what you can control, accepting what you can't, choosing to be good no matter what. It's about inner peace, being resilient no matter what's happening around you.
So like training your mind to handle anything life throws at you.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of chariots, we're dealing with deadlines, annoying coworkers, the constant barrage of news. The Stoics would say it's not about the events themselves, but how you react to them.
So you're saying even though the world's completely different now, the problems we face haven't really changed all that much.
That's the weird thing, right? We're still asking the same questions. How do I find meaning? How do I deal with setbacks? How do I make good decisions when everything's crazy?
That makes sense, I guess. But sometimes Stoicism seems kind of serious. All reason, no fun. Was Marcus Aurelius just a super serious dude all the time?
That's a pretty common misunderstanding about Stoicism. While it does focus on discipline and using your head, it's not about shutting off your emotions completely. Even Aurelius wrote about how important joy is, gratitude, even humor.
Humor. A Roman emperor cracking jokes. Now I'm really interested. But how can a 2,000-year-old philosophy help us today, especially with all our technology and how fast everything moves?
Well, Stoicism gives you a way to deal with challenges and things you just can't predict. And that's something we all deal with, right? It's timeless in a way. And what's crazy is how this ancient wisdom is actually reaching people today. We found something kind of unexpected while we were getting ready for this deep dive.
Ooh, tell me. What'd you find?
We found a podcast episode. It's called The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. Came out July 29, 2024 on Apple Podcasts.
Wait, a podcast about a book that old? That's bringing history to life, huh? It makes you wonder how they made it work for people today.
Right. Is it just reading the book? Or is there someone like a modern-day philosopher explaining stuff? Maybe they're connecting Aurelius's teachings to things like using social media or focusing when everything's distracting you.
So many questions. This is like time travel with ideas. You've got this Roman emperor's thoughts turned into something people can listen to today. Makes you think. Would Marcus Aurelius even listen to a podcast about his own journal?
I would love to know what he'd think. The interesting thing is this podcast isn't just in one place, it's on Apple Podcasts. So that means
we can see where people are listening all over the world. You know me, I can't resist digging into some data. Let's see where everyone's tuning in to hear what Marcus Aurelius has to say.
All right, let's check out this list. All the countries and regions where you can find the podcast.
Wow, look at this. Turkmenistan, Micronesia, Eswatini. This is everywhere, literally all over the map.
It really shows how universal these ideas are. Remember what we were saying about Stoicism, how it's about dealing with tough stuff and finding that inner peace. That resonates with people no matter where they are or what time they live in.
I guess it's true. No matter what language you speak or where you live, you're still going to deal with the same basic human stuff.
Totally. And maybe that's why people from such different places are listening to this podcast. They're looking for guidance, wisdom, something to help them figure out this crazy thing called life.
This is getting pretty deep. We've got ancient philosophy, a modern podcast, and listeners from every corner of the world. What do you think these listeners are getting out of it?
What stands out to you about this podcast being everywhere?
I don't know. It makes me wonder if our modern world, with all its technology, is more like Aurelius's time than we think. We might have smartphones and spaceships, but we're still asking the same questions about how to live a good life.
That's a really good point. Maybe the search for meaning and purpose goes beyond time and technology.
Okay, so we've got this super interesting podcast, all kinds of listeners, and a philosophy that seems to connect ancient Rome to today. But what about the podcast itself? What are people actually hearing when they listen?
That's where it gets really interesting. We don't know for sure what's in the podcast, but we can guess, right?
Let's put our detective hats on. What are the possibilities?
Well, it could just be someone reading meditations out loud, a chance for people to hear the original words.
Like an audiobook version of his thoughts.
Exactly. Or maybe they have commentary, like a modern Stoic philosopher explaining things and how it connects to today's world.
That'd be cool. It'd be like having a guide to help you understand Aurelius's writing. It can be pretty dense sometimes.
And then there's the chance that they're going even further, taking Aurelius's teachings and showing how they can help with specific modern problems, dealing with too much information, focusing when you're constantly distracted, staying strong when everything feels uncertain.
Now you're talking. To hear how this ancient stuff can be used for today's problems, it's almost like having a Roman emperor as your life coach.
I'm not sure Aurelius would like that comparison.
Probably not, but you know what I mean. It's crazy to think that these old ideas can still be useful and helpful today.
It really is. It shows how powerful ideas can be. They can go beyond time and culture. But before we get lost in thinking about what a Roman emperor would think about podcasts,
Yeah, we should probably give our listeners a break. When we come back, we'll dig into some of the key ideas of Stoicism and how they can apply to your life. Stay with us.
back to Mighty Habits. Before we got sidetracked talking about podcasts, we were about to unpack some of the core tenets of Stoicism.
Right, we were saying how this ancient philosophy could actually help us deal with our modern lives. But to be honest, I'm still not clear on how it works. It's easy to say, focus on what you can control. But what does that actually mean?
Let's start with that core principle then. The dichotomy of control. This is where Stoicism gets really practical. It's about seeing the difference between what you have power over and what you don't.
Okay, so what kinds of things are under our control?
Your thoughts, your judgments, your actions. The Stoics would say those are what you can directly influence. Everything else, external events, what other people think, even your own health, those are outside your control.
Hold on, you're telling me I can't control whether I get sick? That doesn't sound very empowering.
It's not about denying reality. Of course, you can do things that are good for your health, but you can't guarantee you'll never get sick. Stoicism isn't about pretending things are different. It's about putting your energy where it actually makes a difference.
So instead of freaking out about things I can't change, I should focus on how I react.
Exactly. It's about changing your perspective from why is this happening to me to what's the best way I can deal with this. That's where you find your power.
I see what you mean. But can we make it more concrete? How does this work in real life? Say you're in traffic and you're going to be late for a meeting.
The modern-day chariot race. Instead of getting stressed about something you can't do anything about, a Stoic would take a minute to look at the situation.
So instead of texting apologies like crazy and worrying about what people will think, I should just relax and accept the traffic.
Relax might be a stretch. It's more about choosing a better way to react. You could use the time to prepare for your meeting in your head, listen to a podcast, or just practice being patient. The point is to focus on what you can do in that moment.
Okay, I get it. It's about reacting in a way that matches your values, even when everything's going haywire around you. It's about taking control of your own mind.
Exactly. And this applies to everything. A difficult coworker, a frustrating situation, even just the everyday stuff. Stoicism gives you a way to face those challenges with more strength and purpose.
This makes me think about something Aurelius wrote in Meditations. He said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's pretty powerful.
It really is. It brings us to another important Stoic idea, living in accordance with nature.
Okay, this is where I get lost. What does living in accordance with nature even mean in Stoicism? Am I supposed to go live in a forest and eat berries?
Huh. I get why you'd think that. But nature wasn't just about the physical world for the Stoics. It was more about the order of the universe, the principles of reason and virtue that control everything.
So it's more about aligning your thoughts and actions with some kind of universal order, with what's good and right.
Exactly. It's about trying to live a life guided by reason and virtue, even when it's hard. It's about realizing that we're part of something bigger than ourselves and trying to live in harmony with that.
Okay, now it's starting to make more sense. But how does this living in accordance with nature actually work in everyday life?
Imagine you're facing a moral dilemma. A Stoic would tell you to stop, step back from your emotions, and look at the situation from a bigger perspective.
So instead of reacting based on instinct or what you want, you're thinking about it in a more rational and ethical way.
Exactly. You're asking yourself, what's the right thing to do in this situation? What would a good person do? You're making choices based on universal principles, not just your own desires.
I'm seeing how this could be really helpful for decision making, especially tough decisions.
Yeah.
But let's be real. Is it even possible to live like this all the time? We're human, we have emotions, we get caught up in the moment.
You're right. Stoicism isn't about becoming an emotionless robot. It's about understanding your emotions, knowing that they don't last forever and often come from our own interpretations, and then choosing to react to them in a way that's reasonable and virtuous.
So it's not about suppressing emotions, but choosing how you respond.
Exactly. And that's where the Stoic practice of reflection and self-examination is important. They believed in taking time to look at your thoughts and actions, finding where you can improve, and trying to live a better, more virtuous life.
So it's like a constant process of self-improvement,
Yes.
but guided by reason and virtue. Wouldn't that get exhausting, though? Always analyzing everything you do and think.
It's definitely a challenge. Even the Stoics admitted we'd mess up sometimes. They saw it as a lifelong journey of learning and growing, not about being a perfect Stoic.
So progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And that's where acceptance and resilience are important in Stoicism. They knew life is full of challenges. They thought we could use those experiences as chances to grow and learn.
So even when things go wrong, there's a stoic way to handle it.
Absolutely. Instead of dwelling on what you've lost or can't control, Stoics would say, focus on what you can learn. Focus on how to move forward in a way that matches your values.
Okay, now I see how practical this can be. It reminds me of that podcast episode about meditations. We were talking about how many different countries it's available in.
Right. It seemed like these ideas are popular all over the world.
And it makes you wonder, what kind of person is listening to that? What are they looking for?
I bet it's all sorts of people, each with their own reason for listening to Aurelius. Some might be interested in history. They want to understand what a Roman emperor was thinking.
Others might want practical advice. They're feeling overwhelmed by life, or stressed, or they're trying to find their purpose.
And maybe some are just curious about Stoicism.
Whatever their reason, it's really interesting that so many people all over are finding something valuable in these ancient ideas. What do you think about that?
What's on your mind?
It makes me think about how powerful ideas can be. They can last for centuries and cross cultures. Here we are, so much later, and we're still struggling with the same basic questions about living a good life. And this old text still has something to say about it.
It's really profound when you think about it. It shows how philosophy can offer wisdom and guidance for generations and generations.
It really does. Remember how I was skeptical about Stoicism being relevant today? But after looking at these main ideas,
What's changed for you?
I'm starting to see how these ideas, like focusing on what you can control or living in accordance with nature, can give us a way to deal with the challenges we face. Even in our world with all its technology, it's not about becoming a Stoic overnight. It's about taking these core principles and trying them out in our own lives.
That's a great way to look at it. It's about taking those old ideas and seeing how they work for us today.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's so exciting about this deep dive. It's not just about learning about Stoicism, it's about seeing how we can actually use it in our own lives.
That's the core of it, right? Taking these ancient ideas and making them our own. Finding those timeless bits of wisdom that can help us through life. It doesn't matter what time we live in. You know, as we've been talking about these Stoic principles, I've been thinking maybe we're making it sound a little too serious.
Too serious. You think we're making Stoicism sound like it's just for robots or something?
Not robots exactly, but maybe we focus too much on the discipline and self-control parts.
So you're saying there's more to Stoicism than just being tough and enduring hardship?
Exactly. Remember Aurelius? He wrote about joy, gratitude, even humor.
Wait, humor? A Roman emperor telling jokes? Now that's something I'd like to see.
Hard to picture, right? But the Stoics knew that life can be pretty absurd. And sometimes the best way to deal with tough situations is to laugh a little.
So like they say, if you don't laugh, you'll cry.
That's it. It's about finding that balance. Taking life seriously, but not taking yourself too seriously. Knowing that even when things are hard, you can still find some lightness, some perspective.
This reminds me of what we were talking about before, living in accordance with nature.
Oh, how so?
Well, if nature is all about balance and harmony, like the Stoics believed, then maybe finding joy and humor is part of that. It's about being okay with the whole human experience, not just the serious stuff.
That's a great connection. It's about realizing that life has both good and bad, joy and sorrow. And being open to all of it, that's part of what makes life full and meaningful.
This is making me think about Stoicism in a whole new way. It's not just about dealing with hardship, it's about finding joy, even when things are tough. It's about approaching life with a sense of balance.
Yeah, and maybe even with a little humor.
Exactly. But let's get back to meditations. We were saying how it's finding a new audience today with podcasts and all these other ways people are getting information. It's amazing to think about how Aurelius's ideas are still being used and understood in the 21st century.
It makes you wonder, what would Marcus Aurelius think about his personal journal becoming so popular?
Can you imagine? He's scrolling through Apple Podcasts and sees an episode called The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. What kind of review would he give?
Maybe 5 stars for historical accuracy.
Huh, maybe.
Yeah.
But seriously, it's amazing how his ideas are still relevant after all these centuries.
It really is. It shows how universal the human experience is. We might live in a completely different world than Aurelius did, but we're still asking the same questions. How do we live a good life? How do we deal with hard times? How do we find meaning?
And that's why meditations is still important today. It gives us a way to deal with those questions, no matter who we are or what we believe.
Exactly. It's not a set of rules. It's more like reflections and insights to help us approach life with more wisdom, more resilience, and yes, even a little humor.
Well said. So, if you're feeling overwhelmed by the world today, or you're just looking for some timeless wisdom, I definitely recommend checking out Meditations.
You might be surprised by what this old book can teach you.
And who knows? Maybe you'll find yourself tapping into your inner Stoic the next time you face a challenge.
Remember, it's about focusing on what you can control. Your thoughts, your actions, your reactions.
And if nothing else works, try to find the funny side of things. Even a Roman emperor would agree with that.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Stoic philosophy.
And don't forget to subscribe to Mighty Habits for more explorations of all sorts of fascinating topics. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those habits mighty.